You're 55. Lately, the jar lids are harder to twist open. The stairs leave you a little more out of breath than they used to. And at your last checkup, your doctor said two words you didn't love: muscle loss. Then a friend tells you the most studied supplement for that exact problem is the same white powder sitting in your grandson's gym bag: creatine. Most people over 50 think creatine is just for bodybuilders. The data says it might be one of the most important supplements for aging well, and almost nobody over 50 is taking it. I work as a pharmaceutical lab analyst. Reading the studies and the lab reports on compounds like this one is my actual job. So let me show you what the real data says about creatine after 50. What it does, what it doesn't, the form that actually works, the safety myth that scares people off, which, as someone who reads lab numbers for a living, drives me a little crazy, and how to pick one that isn't quietly contaminated. No hype, just the evidence. Let's start with what creatine actually is, because it's not a drug and it's not a steroid. It's a compound your own body makes every day and that you already eat in meat and fish. Your muscles store it as something called phosphocreatine. Think of it as a tiny instant battery that powers your fastest, most forceful movements. Standing up from a chair, catching yourself when you trip. Here's the part that matters after 50. As you age, two things happen at once. You slowly lose muscle, and the amount of creatine stored in that muscle drops too. Adults lose roughly 1 to 2% of their muscle mass every year after midlife, and lower body strength can fall even faster. That's the condition doctors call sarcopenia, and it's one of the biggest predictors of falls, lost independence, and frailty. So supplementing creatine isn't about getting big. It's about refilling a tank that age is slowly draining. Now to the evidence, and this is where it's strongest. When researchers combine creatine with resistance training in older adults, the results beat training alone. One analysis pooled 22 studies and over 700 people, average age in their 60s. The group taking creatine while lifting gained about 1 1/3 kilograms more lean muscle than the group lifting with a placebo, roughly 3 extra pounds of muscle, plus greater gains in chest press and leg press strength. Other research found the same thing for everyday function: getting out of a chair, climbing stairs, carrying groceries. But I need to be honest about the catch, because this is where most videos oversell. Creatine is not a pill that builds muscle while you sit still. In the studies, it works as a multiplier on resistance training. You still have to do the work, some form of strength training 2 or 3 times a week. Creatine just makes that work pay off more. Take it without lifting, and you lose most of the benefit. Here's the part almost nobody over 50 knows. Your brain runs on creatine too. It uses the same little battery system your muscles do, and it's an energy-hungry organ. So researchers started asking, if we top up creatine, does thinking improve? The early answer is interesting, but I'm going to stay careful here because this science is younger than the muscle science. A 2025 review of older adults found that 5 of 6 studies linked creatine to better cognition, mostly in memory and attention. A separate analysis found a small but real improvement in memory. The honest summary: the effect is modest. The studies are smaller and more mixed than the muscle research, and it shows up most in people who start with low creatine levels, like older adults, vegetarians, or anyone who's stressed and sleep deprived. So I won't tell you creatine is a brain pill. I'll tell you the early data is promising, and that the same cheap powder doing your muscles good may be quietly helping the organ that matters most. Now the big one. The number one reason people over 50 refuse creatine. I heard it wrecks your kidneys. As someone who reads lab markers for a living, let me clear this up, because it's mostly a misunderstanding of a single number. When your doctor checks your kidneys, one thing they look at is a marker in your blood called creatinine. Higher creatinine can mean your kidneys aren't filtering well. Here's the catch. Creatinine is literally the breakdown product of creatine. So when you supplement creatine, your creatinine naturally ticks up. Not because anything is damaged, but because there's simply more creatine in your system being processed. It's like a fuel gauge reading higher because you filled the tank, not because the engine is broken. A doctor who doesn't know you take creatine can look at that number and wrongly assume a problem. The actual research is reassuring. Across more than 30 years and dozens of studies, creatine at normal doses, and even far higher, has shown no kidney damage in healthy people. The whole scare traces back largely to a single case report from 1998 of a patient who already had kidney disease, and it was never properly replicated. So the honest rule is this: if you have healthy kidneys, the evidence says creatine is one of the safest supplements there is. If you already have kidney disease or you take medication that affects your kidneys, that's a real exception. Talk to your doctor first and ask them to monitor with a marker other than creatinine. Okay, you're convinced it's worth trying. Walk into a store and you'll face a wall of options: hydrochloride, buffered, pH balanced, ethyl ester, liquid, gummies. They all promise better absorption and less bloating, and they all cost more. Here's what the data says: skip them. The form proven in over 500 studies is the cheapest and oldest one: plain creatine monohydrate. No head-to-head human trial has shown the fancy forms produce more muscle creatine, more strength, or better results than monohydrate at the same dose. Buffered creatine, no advantage. Ethyl ester actually raised muscle creatine less than monohydrate. You are quite literally paying more for less evidence. If a label is selling you a next-generation form, it's selling you marketing. But here's where my world comes in, and where the real difference hides. Not all monohydrate is clean. Creatine is made through an industrial chemical reaction, and cheaper manufacturing can leave behind byproducts, compounds like dicyandamide and dihydrotriazine, plus leftover creatinine. Most of the world's creatine is made in China, and very few brands tell you where theirs comes from or test it. In one analysis of creatine sold online, only about 8% advertised any third-party testing for purity or contaminants. That means the vast majority are asking you to just trust the label. So here's what I look for, the same way I'd evaluate any compound at work: a stated purity, ideally 99.9%, the kind of number verified by the same lab methods I use every day, a recognized purity standard like CreaPure, an independent third-party certification, names like NSF, certified for sport, or informed choice, which means an outside lab confirmed it contains what it claims and nothing it shouldn't, including heavy metals. So if you take one thing from this, here's the whole protocol. 1. Pick plain creatine monohydrate that's third-party tested. Ignore the fancy forms. 2. Take 3 to 5 grams a day, every single day, including rest days. Consistency keeps your muscles saturated. You don't need a loading phase. It just gets you there a few days faster. 3. Pair it with some resistance training, 2 or 3 times a week. That's where the muscle benefit actually happens. 4. If you have kidney disease, clear it with your doctor first. That's it. A few dollars a month for the most studied supplement in existence. The bottom line: creatine after 50 isn't about chasing the body you had at 25. It's about holding on to the muscle, the strength, and maybe even the sharpness that aging quietly takes. It's cheap, it's remarkably safe for healthy people, and the biggest reasons people avoid it are myths. The only real mistakes are buying the wrong form, skipping the lifting, or trusting a label that won't show you its numbers. I'm a lab analyst,